Hello and welcome. My name is Cheryl Carter from Global Minded, and this is part of our event 2020 and the higher education series of events. So we're delighted that you've joined us today, and we will have this posted to our YouTube 2020 channel. So we look forward to sharing that with you as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce today's host of our session today, Dr. Crystal Rose, MD, PhD, who has long been at the intersection of health, education, and equity issues. And she has really understood for a long, long time what COVID-19 is bringing into this heightened perspective at this time in our nation and in our world. During this mandated quarantine, we're seeing the convergence as well as the importance of these intersectionalities. Today, during this college presidential roundtable, we will hear how these inequities come into view, notably in higher education choices and options. I welcome you today to join this exciting conversation and pass it to Crystal.
Thank you so much, Carol, and I appreciate the invitation. Thank you, Global Minded. My name is Dr. Crystal Rose. I'm the Executive Director of Academic Affairs at Aussie Media. We are a multimedia educational portal where we share with our 50 million readers, viewers, learners, people, places, trends, and ideas that are worthy of your time and ours. And today, I'm really proud to introduce to you a distinctive and a diverse group of U.S. college presidents to discuss post-pandemic models in higher education. And now up front, I'd love to share with you some housekeeping. If you have any questions, you can place those in the Q&A box. We'll have a question and answer period later on. Now, you may have heard in recent times, there's a Princeton review poll out that says upcoming students who are going to go to college for the first time this fall are really starting to contemplate taking into consideration distance. And so this is as never before. And it really means that community colleges and open access campuses are now have their day in the spotlight. And how they adapt to this post-pandemic time may not only determine the future of education, but also the possible recovery of our economy. Now, some of you may ask, how is this? And, it's really quite simple. They have a shorter and perhaps sometimes a more of a direct education to a workforce pipeline than traditional universities, and also at a fraction of the cost. And that's something that's important too. And then you look at the advantages for high school students who can do dual enrollment. Also, a lot of businesses, employers are looking at community colleges, open access campuses in order to upskill their employees. And so that really means broad-based appeal. And so I'd like to begin by inviting our panelists one at a time. First, Dr. Jamillah Moore, to give you first a brief introduction. Dr. Moore?
Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Rose, and thank you, Global Minded, for the opportunity to participate. My name is Jamillah Moore. I am president of Kenyatta College in Redwood City, California, San Mateo County, in the heart of Silicon Valley. I've been involved and leading in different roles in higher education for the last 20 years. Kenyatta College is one of 3 colleges within the San Mateo Community College District. We are about sitting within the heart of Redwood City, California, and it's really a wonderful opportunity for me to be here with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Cheryl Nixon, Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs at Fort Lewis College. Thank you, Dr. Nixon.
Thank you so much, and it's wonderful to be here. So I'm representing Fort Lewis College, which is located in Durango, Colorado. And the profile of Fort Lewis is very unique in that we are a rural institution in the southwestern part of Colorado in the Four Corners area. And part of our historical self-definition is as a Native American student serving institution. And this relates to the fact that we had a complex past where we were a Fort Lewis. We were an Indian boarding school at a different location, and then became a 4-year college. So we're a 4-year public liberal arts school. We are small-ish, I would say. We're at 3,300 students, and 50% of our students are students of color, and our population of our student body is 40% Native American. Because of our unique past, we have a special tuition waiver treaty that was formed with the state of Colorado and the federal government that allows Native American students to attend us tuition free. We're one of only 2 schools in the country that work in this way. So as a result of that, we have over 170 different Native American tribes represented on our campus. So we have, I think, a unique profile in that we're Native American serving, and we're also rural American serving, at the same time being a school where over 50% of our students are students of color. So we feel as though the global pandemic has really, hit our students in some unique ways, and very happy to be invited to this panel today to talk about that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I'd like to introduce next Dr. Bill Pink, President of Grand Rapids Community College.
Good evening, all. As Dr. Rose said, I am Bill Pink. I'm honored to serve as the 10th president of Grand Rapids Community College. We are in Grand Rapids, Michigan. GRCC is the oldest community college in the state of Michigan, one of the oldest in the country. I am honored to serve as its first African-American president in its 104-year history. We at GRCC, we live by, at least I keep preaching 2 words, relevant and responsive. Are we relevant and responsive to our community, to our students, and to each other? I believe as a community college, if you can't say yes to both of those, I'm not sure why you exist. It is what our mission needs to always be, staying relevant, staying responsive. GRCC is all said and done at the end of a year. We are about 12,500 students on our credit-bearing side of the house. Last year, we did another 20,000 students on the workforce development side of the house. So we total a little over a typical year, about 30,000, a little over 30,000 students. That workforce development arm of our institution is very important in that we service Kent County here in West Michigan is our main space of our main campus. We are an urban school, downtown Grand Rapids. We have 4 locations that we have meeting classes in next door in Ottawa County, which is on the lake shore of Michigan, of Lake Michigan. And so we have somewhere over 2,000 students out on the lakeshore. So our work here in Grand Rapids that I'll share a little bit about just in terms of our diversity and our diversity initiatives, especially in being this community's college in this area is, as we see it, vital to the ecosystem and the economic well-being of West Michigan. And we are proud to serve a very important part of that mission here in West Michigan. I am honored to be on this panel with my esteemed colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pink. And now I have the honor of introducing Dr. Michael Torrence, President of Motlow State Community College. Dr. Torrence, you have our attention.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Rose. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about post-COVID and currently, while we're in COVID, in the state of Tennessee and Motlow State Community College. We serve a 11 county service area with 5 brick and mortar locations across the 11 county service area. We have approximately 7,023 students as of last fall, the largest enrollment in the 50-year history of the institution. We are 50 years old and would have celebrated that at the end of this past spring with the 50th graduation commencement ceremonies. Additionally, Motlow serves a focus area in the region as a hub, not the only hub, but a hub of regional and economic and community development. Workforce and student success are two focus areas, and overarchingly to support those, the use of data to be informed and use of emerging technology to inform and utilize access points to leverage the teaching, learning, and training that needs to take place in our region so that we can provide what our employers need. Additionally, serving as one of the institutions within the Tennessee Board of Regents system, as well as a support network for transferability to all of our 4 institutions within the state. One of the things that we continue to be recognized for is completion, as well as growth. Over the last several years, Motlow has been recognized this past fall as the 35th fastest growing post-secondary institution in the nation. What that means is one of our areas, Rutherford County, actually is one of the top 10 fastest growing counties in the nation. Now, because of where we are and what's happening in the world today, we are preparing and planning to support the initiatives, not only for our students, but also make sure that we shore up success, continued success for our employees. I am pleased to be on here with my esteemed colleagues, and it's good to see your faces this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Torrence. And at this time, we'd like to launch a brief poll. You can have a moment to start that. I'll share some of the results. So it looks like we're mostly here, combined, mostly college age. And so, and people who are in education, either in community college, open access campuses. And so this is a really good audience to have this conversation. And so I'd like to now welcome again Dr. Michael Torrence, because I believe he's really ideal to discuss this next topic, earning while learning. Because I'd love for the audience to hear, Dr. Torrence, how your school has approached workforce development in your community college. Thank you.
Thank you again. And to my colleagues who are listening, the future of work is very much tied to and akin to both community, technical, and four-year institutions, as well as the post-baccalaureate training that goes upon the theoretical underpinnings of what needs to take necessary to prepare the next level employees for the future. Motlow has taken a considerable focus on emerging technology, but also paying attention to open access, which is our mission, while we support as many needs as possible. There's a saying that, an adage that predates me that goes, you can't be all things to all people. Well, I disagree. And I think that the flexibility and the fluidity that our faculty, staff, and community shows allows us to prepare and utilize those skill sets and expertise because they're still learning and growing for our workforce needs and employee-based needs. Our faculty do things such as continual PD. They do things like go to the workforce site and continue to learn from what the practitioner is doing so that it really undergirds and supports what we're teaching and training for in our labs and in our classrooms. Our partners continue to be focused on what Tennessee's focused on as a state. And that is, we have largely a lot to do with advanced manufacturing. We are largely seeing a lot of IT. We're largely seeing a lot of healthcare. There's also, obviously, the impact of COVID has slowed quite a bit our hospitality support, but we know that that network will continue to come back as we get students back to class in the fall of 2020. Our partnerships range from on-the-job training to learning while they earn, as well as taking a look back and trying to be forward-thinking. I think that it's very important not to be prescriptive in terms of how we've delivered education and training in the past. With the advent and use of emerging technology, as well as the needs to upskill the current worker to what he or she may need for the future of the workforce, that means that training and teaching and learning must occur on an ongoing basis. We also introduced that concept of all of my colleagues that are listening, as well as our panelists, know about the half-life of everything, which means that what used to take a year now takes 6 months. What used to take 6 months now takes 3 months. And what used to take 3 months can actually be done in 4 days in some instances when you train people to utilize robotics, advanced manufacturing, mechatronics, and AI. This is not to allude to the fact that our students will not be employable. What this means is that they're going to have a gauge and a skill set that will actually spur forward the workforce and the entities that are in our region, and more importantly, allow for business and industry to be attracted to coming to the Southeastern region.
Thank you very much, Dr. Torrence, for sharing that. And so we're hearing about the importance of education to the workforce pipeline. Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Cheryl Nixon to share how Fort Lewis College is organizing themselves in this post-pandemic period to ensure that students are able to continue learning. And in this next topic, post-pandemic learning continuity. Dr. Nixon?
Thank you so much. That's great. And I think that all of my colleagues would agree that this has been such a challenging time, because we know that one of the ways that we keep our students engaged and we make sure that they persist in their education is that they have meaningful classroom experiences, that they connect with their faculty members, that they connect with their peers, that they feel as if they're part of a community of learners. And of course, the COVID crisis disrupted that very special space of the classroom. And I think for many of our students, they feel that the classroom is sort of a safe space where they can take risks, that they can be encouraged and mentored by faculty as they're learning. So I think part of the challenge, higher education faces, that we all face, is how to maintain that special, unique space of the classroom, even in this disrupted time period. So we felt as if it was hitting, the disruption was hitting our Native American students the hardest. And I would expand that to say our rural students that do not have strong broadband access, do not have good internet connection, do not have Wi-Fi, do not even have good hardware. They might not have owned a laptop to bring home with them. That the digital divide really became present to us when we had to shift online. And now I think looking ahead to the fall, that is the problem we are attacking and want to solve. And again, I think that, Fort Lewis is not alone in this. So I thought I would just share a couple of quick things that we learned and things that we did in the spring, in the past month. It was just a short few weeks ago. But now that we're hoping to kind of continue and hone and even perfect a bit as we look ahead to the fall. So one of the issues is the idea that our students were not prepared in terms of the technology that they had at their fingertips to be able to transition so rapidly. We literally transitioned within 5 days to an online format. And again, I'm sure all of my colleagues feel the same way, that it was such a quick, fast-moving crisis that we found ourselves outpacing the ability of our students to maybe find solutions to how they could be online with us. So for the fall, what we'll be doing is creating a technology bundle for our students that we will make sure that every student has a good technology setup. The bundle will be a laptop, and for students who live in a more rural, remote area, many of our students living on reservations will need like a hotspot type of connection, something that will help them connect into the internet. Some students, that's not even where they're located, it's virtually impossible for them to connect to the internet. So creating even backup plans for them. What we did in the spring is we actually mailed students flash drives, mailed them laptops, or we mailed them hard copies of materials and allowed them to do just a phone call in to continue with some of their studies. So we're looking at that array of options and packaging it together along with a technology package that will be making sure that every student is well prepared. And again, our size, we're 3,300 students, we feel that we can do this. We're using some of the CARES stimulus funding to do this, along with some generous donors within our community. So that's the first thing, is the digital divide. And we think there's a lot of work to do there, but we're going to do as much as we can by the fall to be preparing our students for that. I'll mention two other things quickly. One is that in the spring, when we moved online, we realized that we could use our student success office. Our mascot is the Skyhawk, so we call ourselves the Skyhawk Station, our student success Skyhawk Station. We decided we should do an old-fashioned phone outreach kind of phone tree, and picked up the phone in combination with our Native American Center on campus, and just made master lists of students that we knew probably were having digital connectivity issues, and we just called them, person to person. We started off with different sort of subgroupings of students. Students we thought that might have internet problems, and then also students, our graduating seniors, for example, that subgroup, to make sure that they would finish the semester and graduate. Created subgroupings of students, and then did an old-fashioned phone call. That worked surprisingly well. Students actually liked having that human voice, that person-to-person connection, and they revealed what they needed to us. And based on that, we could serve our students better and more quickly come up with some solutions to what they needed. So we think, looking ahead to the fall, as students come on campus, and they are probably looking at having to do some hybrid learning, some in-person. We hope we will be in person, I think, like all of us. We are planning to be in person, but probably we'll be doing some hybrid learning, some unique ways of dealing with COVID. We'll continue to do some old-fashioned phone outreach and ask students how the experience is going and what insights they would share with us, and then have a rapid transition team translating that into some actions. And then the last thing I'll mention is that one thing that we had is an emergency grant. We have like a persistence grant program on campus, and we found that students needed that more than ever. I think we can assume, that COVID really struck people on many levels, health levels, family levels, also pocketbook. And we have many students who found themselves unemployed, many students having difficulty just maybe buying a plane ticket home, or buying food, just simple, being able to make ends meet, pay their rent. And they were able to request emergency grants. We wound up doing a campaign out to our local community and had a great response for people giving funding into our persistence grant. And these are small grants, they're about $500 a piece. But $500 goes a long way for our students and being able for them to make ends meet. So I think creating a more well-structured emergency grant format for the fall is one of the things that we're looking at also. So those are just 3 examples of things we learned from COVID. And I think we can do a better job in the fall. And maybe these become structures that are really in place in a much more robust way permanently beyond COVID, as ways that we really are constantly reaching out to students, making sure they have the technology they need, and making sure they have that helping hand around even issues like funding whenever they need it. So I think we're coming up with a more comprehensive set of solutions because COVID revealed to us what we really need to be doing to supporting our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nixon. And so you've heard how community colleges and open access campuses, how they're really learning and they're really responding. I'd love to now invite Dr. Jamillah Moore, talking about not only the perception of community colleges, particularly like hers that's in Silicon Valley, but also the opportunity for big industries to utilize students that come from her college. So Dr. Moore?
Thank you, Dr. Rose. So yes, once again, Kenyatta College sits in Silicon Valley in Redwood City, California. It is an HSI, Hispanic Serving Institution. We are surrounded by private four-year institutions, Motlow College. We are 3 freeway exits away from Stanford University. We sit really, truly in a dichotomy. I have Palo Alto on one side, Woodside on the other, and then east Palo Alto, next door to Redwood City. So one of the things that we have learned about the perception versus opportunity is that being in a somewhat affluent and wealthy area, there is a perception or a misperception that we do not have pockets of poverty, but we do. Prior to me hopping on this panel, I was participating in our college food bank, our drive-through food bank, where we have been for the last month, feeding anywhere from 700 to 1,000 families every Friday until the end of July from 11 to 1 p.m. And we arrive at 10 o'clock to register individuals. So this is in a backdrop of houses on hills in San Mateo, California. So there is a misperception that somehow because things look pretty and you're in the backdrop of sunny California, that there are not inequities, and there are truly inequities. Even prior to COVID, many of our students work more than one job, and they have families that they are raising, parents that they are taking care of. And our students are very resilient. So what we do and what we try to do every single day, pre-COVID or whether we are post-COVID, is to make sure that students have access to resources. We have been fortunate to have wonderful working partnerships with Facebook, with Oracle, with Tesla, where we are working to train individuals that want to go into career technical education types of jobs and employment. Many of our students come from families or they themselves doing a lot of the essential service work. And as most of folks know and my panelists know, community colleges are training a lot of first responders. We have a rad tech program. So we are training individuals who are now dealing first and foremost with what's happening with COVID. And so our ability to kind of work as a dichotomy of fostering, sustaining those partnerships with those key corporations, as well as ensuring that those individuals have the resources that they need and the training that they need, that they can leave our institution and be successful. But one of the things we try to work very strongly on is the unique position that and where Kenyatta sits, that our students unfortunately do not have a public four-year option on the peninsula. The closest four-year institution is either San Jose State or UC Berkeley. So either they have to cross a bridge or get across a few freeways. And for many of our students, once they find their home campus, as most of my panelists will know, that's where they stay, and that's where they like to stay and finish. So we try to do as many wraparound services as possible. So in addition to those partnerships with those corporations and training, we all know that student services programs like that of ELPNS, Puente, TRIO, those types of programs, bridge programs that really help fill the gap so those students have what they need. We have a wonderful STEM center that is also working with students to ensure that those that want to go into the STEM field have every single course as well as free access to tutoring that they need. One of the things we did, similar to what Dr. Nixon spoke about, is we also provided hotspots and Chromebooks and laptops to our students. Some were shipped to them. We also had pickups. Because our students couldn't physically get to our campus, because prior to us closing our doors because of the pandemic and going online, we had a free shuttle that would get students to and from campus and from East Palo Alto, because we know we are dealing with students who have high need. So when you deal with students who have high need, you have to have high touch, intrusive programs that support them. So we are really fortunate that while we sit in the backdrop of Silicon Valley, we work extensively to educate people on the needs of what students must have in order to be successful. They need access to equipment. They need a training program. Some of our students don't have the luxury to go 4 and 6 semesters to transfer. They need to come into a training program that will give them what they need from A to Z. So we also partner with an organization called Job Train that really sets up programs that puts students into jobs and trains them in medical assisting and frontline work that requires anywhere from 2 months, 6 weeks to 12-week types of training programs, because our students need to be able to get certificate types of training so that they can get out into the workforce and start working. So we have been fortunate in a wonderful foundation, partners with Facebook on digital marketing, with Tesla, with Oracle, that have allowed us to forge together programs that allow our students to really get those jobs so that they can go right into the workforce, or to have that support so that they can complete those transfer level units so that they can then transfer to a 4-year institution through our STEM program and go on to earn that BA and that master's and that doctorate. But if we don't have wraparound programs, students would be missed in a community college like that at Kenyatta College in Redwood City if you're surrounded by a Stanford, a Menlo College on the backdrop of a UC Berkeley. And the perception is that because you have beautiful trees and buildings that you don't have first generation students that are struggling. So we work really hard to dismantle the perception that because students may be in affluent areas, they don't have needs. So I really want to thank our partners that have allowed these programs to continue, as well as our student services or groups and individuals that work diligently with those students to ensure that they can be successful in those courses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moore. Yes, hearing about these opportunities, training first line workers right now during this pandemic period really does tell us that, this has a real potential to not only make a capable, but a diverse workforce. And so that's what's really exciting and really bringing some more equity in the situation. And speaking about making equity a priority, I'd like to welcome Dr. Pink and to talk about his school, which is predominantly European American Republican. However, you're seeing the state right now in the front lines. And you're going to also hear how Dr. Pink really nurtures equity, diversity, inclusion in his campus. And he's also recently won an award. And so I'm really happy to invite you back to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. And again, so good to hear my colleagues and talking about and hearing about the work that they are doing. And it's from a community college perspective and really around the target populations that all of us on this panel hit. It is so imperative that we are focused, especially during this time, of what's happening in our country and across the globe. From our standpoint, the thing I have said to Dr. Rose is when it comes to how we, from an equity lens, truly make sure that we are doing our work, especially in this space and especially in this environment, is the word intentionality. We've got to be intentional about this. We can't just depend on it just to suddenly happen and look up and look at our data and say, oh, wow, look at it doesn't work that way, friends. We've got to have that intentionality to where we are focused on some of our populations who are experiencing disparities. As Dr. Moore talked about with their work in California, that intentionality is so important, especially in that intentionality around connecting to companies and businesses and connecting to good work and good jobs and good wages, not just a job. And so from our perspective, and I know Dr. Rose is saying, yeah, but Dr. Pink, you're supposed to talk about something else. I get on a sermon and I start to preach, and I apologize. What we want to talk about from the perspective of GRCC. So as Dr. Rose mentioned, blessed to have recently in the last several weeks been announced as being a 2020 Promising Place to Work from Diverse Issues in Higher Education, partnered with NIZOT, being one of the few community colleges. We're honored to get that this year. And I would say to you, friends, I think from a standpoint of not saying anything of boasting about that work, because as I said to those who were congratulating us, we are still a work in progress. We are a journey, we're not a destination. And so when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and so, and as a community college seated in Grand Rapids in West Michigan, we make it a point to say that we are the community's college and that we service everyone. From my standpoint of leadership, it's important to me that I realize that I have people on my campus who hit at both ends of the spectrum and everywhere in between. My job isn't to do anything of bolstering or smashing their particular ideology. My job is to educate them and to give them opportunity from a community college space. And so what we do is we try to focus on all of those students, but as we focus on all, we realize that in many cases across our histories, that sometimes we have populations that have been left out, and populations that do not have some of those things of paying attention from an equity lens. And so several years ago, upon 3 years ago when I became president, one thing around intentionality is making sure that not only when we hired a chief equity and inclusion officer on our campus, but making sure that her role is a direct report of mine, so that that work can be that close to the president's office, so that my attention to that diversity, equity, inclusion work can truly be right there on my executive leadership team. That is important to us. Therefore, upon her hiring and her coming to our campus, that has been instrumental in having that office. And again, what you would love to happen is that this work just permeate itself throughout the college, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have that ODEI, we call it our Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. You'll hear me say ODEI, that we don't have to have that. That's no, if we, again, intentionality, you've got to assume that we've got to be very intentional about putting those processes in place. And so what that Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, that Chief Equity Inclusion Officer has been able to do in this short period of time is make sure that her tentacles are out there in our, not only on our campus community, but in our community at large, in terms of what the work of the community college, but the diversity work and equity work in representing our students, so that our students feel represented on campus. By far, it doesn't mean that we are perfect and have it all down, but that diversity work of ODEI, and I'll end my comment by saying that work is not just important in terms of our student population, but ODEI is so important from a standpoint of our faculty and staff as well, so that our faculty and staff know and have those resources, but also know that our institution is focused in that regard. And that is what that intentionality for us, at least, is all about.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pink. I think I'd love to dig in that a little bit more and perhaps hear some examples, but you really laid out wonderfully. I'd like to take this moment to do another poll just to see where our audience is in their understanding and with our discussion today, because even though this is a webinar, I'd love for you to take part and to take a moment to vote. And I'm happy to share the results a little bit later. And they're coming in now. And so thank you so much. The question is, after this talk, what is your perspective of open access campuses and community colleges? And most of you are having a very positive view towards this. So thank you so much. And now I'd like to invite back Dr. Pink to share perhaps a little bit more about diversity and inclusion and the role that it plays in this intentionality to create a nurture diversity and equity. Thank you.
Yes, and by the way, in looking at that poll, since I love seeing that positive results of wanting, saying, yes, I would send my child there, I will give you our web address after this is over so you can apply to GRCC. We're online all summer. We have online, I'm sorry. Part of what we do, right? The intentionality around equity and inclusion. So I talked a little bit about what that campus look has, what that resembles. Let me talk to you a little bit about the community at large, because to us, it is important that GRCC, from an equity lens, from an ODEI, again, that's ODEI meaning Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, that we have a reach into our community as well, so that our community, it's important to me, that our community recognizes the community college as being a strong voice and advocate for our populations that are more diverse and those that experience disparities. And so for us, we want to educate our community. So one of the things that we've been doing for 30 plus years is what we call our diversity lecture series, that every year we have at least around 3 to 4 national speakers that we tap that come to our campus during that academic year. They come to campus, and it may be someone talking about African-American males. It may be someone talking about gender studies. It might be someone from our Native American communities. Our focus, though, is to have that national speaker, many times a recognized name, but have them come in and really share with our community, campus community as well as our outside community, because we invite all into that space for us to sit and talk and chew on some of those topics within that diversity lecture series. And that has become a hallmark in our community in terms of some of the diversity work that our college does. Also, on top of that, when I talk about some of our on-campus initiatives that reach out into the community, some of our affinity groups that we have on campus that go outside of just having the student organization. We have our Hispanic Student Association. We have our Black Student Union. We have those on campus, our Native American student organization. But we also have another level of those affinity groups. One we call the Brother to Brother Network. That's primarily African American males, because we saw those data in terms of the disparities there. We're focused. We want to build those young men up. Anyone invited to those, that's the primary focus. We also have one we call NIA, which are mainly made up of our African American women on campus, female students on campus. Anyone invited, but it's primarily those populations. And then we have what we call ALAS, and ALAS is that's our Latinx program affinity group. That what it does is NODEI, and it just gets those students to be able to have a safe space they can come to, share hearts, share what's going on, get some folks speaking some of those positive things into their life and into their academic work. That's important to us. And the final thing I'll mention when I talk about the community, our college for almost 40 years now has an annual awards dinner called the Giant Awards. And it is amazing in that our Giant Awards is an event that recognizes African American leaders in our community. We will, in a Giant Award, we'll give away about 10 awards that night, and they are in the area of business, education, philanthropy, advocacy. We have about 10 different categories that folks are nominated from the West Michigan at large, and once those are decided upon by that committee, we have a huge gala that celebrates and recognizes those African American leaders in our community. That committee is made up of many of our community leaders, where GRCC is that main sponsor. The proceeds go towards scholarships for our students. We're blessed to have a GRCC foundation and scholarships that gives away over $1 million a year in scholarships to our students. And so Giants is one of those things. This last year, we were able to get it in before the pandemic hit, got it in February, and we had over 700 people that night, sold out the place, had awfully good food. But it was another occasion where our institution intentionally reaches out to this community to say, this is important. This means something, not only to our institution, it means something to our community. And for us, that is important. It's really cool that when spring break hits on our campus, spring break, we take advantage of our campus being empty. And so we have 2 events on campus while everyone's gone. We have our Hispanics, our Latino Youth Conference on campus, our Latinx Youth Conference that brings about 600 Latinx middle school students to campus. Middle school, yes, I said that. It's awesome to have those folks on campus. And the very next day, we have our African American Male Summit, which brings this year over 1,100 African American high school young men to our campus, partnered with the Urban League locally to speak things into these students' lives, to help them know you have not only a community college, but that's here to support you, but you have folks here that want to see you successful and want to help you get there. Again, intentionality. We have to be intentional in these spaces.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pink. You know, we're hearing about how community colleges are having a huge benefit on their communities, and it really struck me when I heard about what Kenyatta College is doing right now. During this pandemic period, I want to welcome back Dr. Moore to share a little bit about that.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. So yes, prior to the pandemic, like some of my other colleagues, I'm sure, we had and we still do have this program in place. We have a basic needs program for students. And so we have a food pantry on campus. We would have a community market in which once a month we would provide free food to students, anyone from the community as well as staff. And we would just set it up the tables one day out of the month and open it up and let students come through. We also have a working partnership with SparkPoint. The SparkPoint program offers resources, financial planning, tax return assistance, and coaching for students, and we work in collaboration with United Way. And each one of our campuses in the district has that program. Kenyatta College is one community college of 115 in California. So in California, the community college system is very large. We serve 2.1 million students system-wide in California. At Kenyatta, we have a head count of about 9,000 and an FTES at about 7,200 students. One of the things that we were doing prior to COVID and providing for leveraging that of resources is that we had a combination of what our foundation would provide, what our district itself would provide through our bookstore sales and auxiliary services, and the partnerships we had in the community working through SparkPoint and United Way. So we were providing meals, food pantry, access to food pantry to students. When the pandemic hit and students could no longer get access to food from the campus, we were sending out gift cards. So we were sending out grocery store gift cards to students, and anywhere from $75 to $100 a month. And we had agreed to do that to the end of the fiscal year, actually the end of June 30th. We now have resources to extend that to the end of July. So what we've done is once the students who are already our basic needs students within that program, meeting a certain criteria, meaning they've also completed a FAFSA or a CADA, which is a application for undocumented students as well, we would provide them with resources. We are continuing that program. What we're asking the students to do now that we are wrapping up spring semester is that if they enroll in 1 to 2 units in the summer, because you want to keep them engaged, that we will continue to keep them a part of our basic needs program. And so we are continuing to provide them with those gift cards, as well as giving them access to virtual counseling, virtual training through SparkPoint. Also too, our associated students body, our campus government council, having their own resources as well, wanted to make sure that our most neediest students were being taken care of. So they donated $4,000 of their own money to go towards that basic needs program. What we had found is because we had an existing program in place and students identified prior to the pandemic, we know that those students' needs don't go away. They could just be exacerbated. So what we did is we had those names and those addresses and those contacts. We simply continue to stay in contact with those students via email, via text message, via phone calls, letting them know what is available still to them, even though we're not seeing them face to face, but that we are making contact with them virtually. Also too, through our Guided Pathways program and our Welcome Center, we have individuals that reached out and made phone calls to every single student that was in our basic needs program to say, did you see the email? Not all of our students respond to their email. So we do things via text messages too. I know people out there like email, I know. Students don't always think that email is the coolest thing. So we started kicking it old school, as I say, and picking up the phone and calling them. We had individuals from our Welcome Center that took lists and made those calls and said, did you get your, we have grocery gift cards. Did you get the card? We also were able to make sure that students had their textbooks. Did you get your hotspot? Did you know you can have access to a hotspot if you don't have internet access? Other things that we were doing too, working in collaboration with our extraordinary faculty and staff, we have done additional work for our undocumented students, because as many as you know, undocumented students don't have access to resources, even more so than students who are struggling in levels of poverty. So we were able to pull together through our foundation. When undocumented students were not eligible for some of those state and federal dollars that were coming through, our foundation stepped up and utilized their emergency fund to continue to provide resources to those students that were undocumented. And we were continuing to make that contact and keep that contact going through our Welcome Center. Also too, we were really excited that we were eligible for the CARES funding through the federal government. So we work through our financial aid programs, our Title IV, and identifying those students who were already in that basic needs program, making sure that they could get access to emergency grants. And those students who were not eligible, we went and put them on the list through the foundation. We're now going to take money that is left over, another percentage of that, to get us through the summer into the fall, because at least for California, we know that we will remain virtual or online through fall semester. So we know that the need will not go away. And so we are trying to continue to extend those resources. And so what we've also done is we've asked that our alumni and our community continue to give specifically to those students in basic needs during what we call our COVID-19 response, because they're still students and they're still our existing students. We want to keep them engaged. We want to keep them enrolled, because this is sometimes the prime time when you can lose students if they don't feel as though they have that support and they can't get access to it. We also are working through our health center, our wellness center. We are doing what they call telemedicine, but also working and helping them with mental health and those students who identify they have a need. We are doing that telehealth and virtual outreach to those students as well. And so we do recognize that we cannot do it all, but we are taking our existing lists, taking our existing programs, and continuing to build from that and utilizing our federal dollars, state dollars, and our foundation, as well as our Spark program, and also through our auxiliary programs, fee-based programs. We've been able to provide additional resources to the students that otherwise would get it if they were face-to-face, but now they need it even more so, that they are working or trying to continue their education online. So those are some of the things we are doing in trying to leverage those resources, and we will continue, as I call it, hustling our way through the summer to find other dollars. We will continue our drive-through food bank to the end of July. And as most of my colleagues know, you get a new fiscal year July 1, but June 1, which is around the corner, we will be reaching out to some of our corporate partners to say, can you please continue to fund our emergency fund to get us to December 2020, because we know the need will continue to grow. And so we've taken what was in our food pantry, we've now accessed that to our drive-through market on Fridays to say to students, what you would normally come pick up face-to-face, please drive through and pick up. And if you can't drive through and get it, let us know. We have students who are volunteering their time to drop that off, and folks from the community in helping our international students to deliver those resources. So those are just examples of some of the things that we're doing.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Moore. We know Kenyatta College, it sounds like it's spelled like Canada, C-A-N-A-D-A, Kenyatta College.
It is. It's pronounced Kenyatta. Thank you
so much. And so many people are hearing about incredible work and development programs. You're hearing about the funding and how the funding is being used. And you still have those people who wonder, well, how can you measure the success these community colleges and these open access campuses are having with use of these federal dollars and other grants? And I'd love for Dr. Michael Torrence to come and to talk a little bit about measuring for success.
Yeah, absolutely. Great discussions by my colleagues. One of the ways in which Tennessee, and specifically Motlow State as one of the Tennessee Board of Regents institutions, looks at assessing success is through our performance funding matrix. That includes completion of 12, 24, 36 credit hours, as well as diversity, as well as workforce hours, and a host of other metrics that we try to do our very best in year after year. We're actually on a 3-year average in terms of how those dollars are doled out. So your 3-year average is your success metric. How well have you done over the past 3 years? Additionally, outside of the funding formula, we also look at programs that need to be created, changed and further developed, and or created. One of the things that we've done through Tennessee Promise, which is the access for last dollar scholarships for all high school students in the state of Tennessee, as well as Tennessee Reconnect, which is the last dollar support for adults in the state of Tennessee. and a little known or really not much touted program called Tennessee Strong, which actually supports those who are Tennessee National Guardsmen or veterans in the state of Tennessee. So being able to support those students is a success when looking at the numbers as they increase. Additionally, in response to COVID, in response to the community, looking at a way to support small business development and spur economic revitalization within our region. Motlow started a small business development cohort or community collaborative, where today I spent the most of the morning actually working in a downtown office space as a collab space, so that we have a presence not just on the campus, but within the community in our service area. Another way that we look at how do we assess if we're being successful or not. Yes, it's about graduation. Yes, it's about retention. Yes, it's about completion. But it's also about placement. Where are we placing our students in terms of graduation? Do they transfer? Or are they going directly to the workforce? Another metric that we're starting to look at and ask questions about as we've introduced an AAS and a certificate-bearing program in entrepreneurship is how many of our students are actually starting their own businesses and understand what a pro forma is and what a business model looks like in terms of their preparation. Another way we're looking at assessing success is the development of our faculty, staff, and community members. I think that this is one of those areas that we don't talk about often, but I think it's very, very important. We can't create the very best excellence that we expect out of our students if we don't ourselves continue to learn and grow as educators and as mentors and as counselors in some instances for the different types of hats that we all wear at community colleges. Lastly, one of the ways that we look at assessing success is the alumni base. Now, this is something different for commuter campuses because typically the experience of a commuter campus versus residential is very, very different. So how do you stay connected to groups? We're looking at bowling. In the South, we're looking at playing cornhole. Additionally, we're making sure that our communities understand that we're accessing and leveraging the fact that we're one of the most technologically advanced institutions in our state, irrespective of nomination of 2-year, 4-year, postgraduate, et cetera, automation and robotics, an XR Academy in 2 locations, looking at putting a 3rd in a high school so that we can leverage dual enrollment opportunities for our students. And looking at different ways in which we can utilize these emerging technologies, not simply for the purposes of gaming and as people look at them as playing games, but also to look at them for all of the entities and industries that need them. When you pick up a skill in terms of coding and programming, it helps with the cyber defense of a hospital. It helps with the cyber defense of the nation. When you pick up these skills, it also helps you with maybe going into the film industry. So there are other things in other skill sets across a whole spectrum of what we call blockchain that allows us to utilize what we're developing for students that are going to meet the needs and challenges for the future workforce in the United States, but specifically in the state of Tennessee. So lots of different ways to assess success. And I will guess that the common denominator is when you feel that you are connected to an organization or you're connected to an entity or human being that has taught you different skill sets, you come back. And I think that's a hallmark of all institutions in higher education. Students to have a connection with the faculty where they spend 94 to 96% of their time, they come back to reinvest in the students that come after them. And that's a very instrumental part of assessing success.
That's excellent. Thank you for walking us through that, Dr. Torrence. It was a really well explained and a thorough presentation of how we should measure success in these areas. And now I'd like to welcome Dr. Cheryl Nixon and really talking about how not only a lot of these open access campuses and community colleges embellish their neighborhoods, their communities. When I heard something about Fort Lewis and what they're doing, how they've rising to the occasion, filling voids and also, real needs and for first line workers. I'd love for her to share about that. Thank you so much, Dr. Nixon.
Thank you. And I think that the conversation we're having right now, I'm just struck by how much resonance there is amongst our different messages, that one of the real issues I think all of us are working on is this question of equity across communities or within our own communities, and how much disparity we do see that COVID has really highlighted even more. And then I think that the last comments we were just hearing are just fantastic examples of how higher education really is a space to create new forms of community. And really, we, I think, probably all see ourselves as sort of engines of community creators. Like, we are doing outreach and service in our communities. And I think that our communities should be looking to us, to higher education, for some of the best ideas of how to pull together, how to be stronger together, and how to look to a bright future together, even in the face of something like COVID. So I think that, right here, just in this short amount of time, we're hearing so many, fantastic examples of one of the most difficult problems we have to solve, the issue of equity. But then that higher ed is really committed to create new forms of community to solve those issues. So, and I'll put a little sharp point on that. For Fort Lewis, again, we're rural, and we really feel the inequity that sometimes hits rural areas. And especially, again, being Native American serving, our largest percentage of students come from our Navajo and come from the Navajo Nation. And if any of you are following the news, you know that COVID has hit the Navajo Nation extremely hard. After New York City, it's the second hardest hit community in terms of percentages of cases. So I think, again, some unexpected inequities, but across our country, where rural communities, and we really feel especially tribal nations, being hit very hard in a time of crisis. So I think, earlier I was talking about the digital divide. And here we see, in our own backyard, we see disparities in healthcare, and disparities in access to health, and disparities in the preparedness of our institutions to help in a health crisis. So we're, again, a fairly small institution, but one of the things that we felt that we could do is try to reach out to our community and help with these difficult problems that were exposed by COVID. So we worked with our area hospital to try to help with the shortage of materials that a rural area has. Again, just revealing sort of basic inequities and things like the supply chain, not having masks. We know this hit the entire nation, but hit rural areas particularly hard. So what we did was our campus sort of looked at ourselves and said, we have laboratories. We have some of the ways that in our own stockpiles of things in our closets, we've got some of the materials that our hospital needs. So our science faculty and our social science faculty on campus really bonded together and collected all the materials that we had on campus: gloves, masks, some of the personal protective equipment, but even some of the basic sort of scientific equipment that was needed by our hospital. Gathered that together and delivered it to our local hospital. In addition, our physics and engineering department, they have laboratories that are able to do construction work. And so they heard of course, again, shortages that hit everywhere, but were hitting our hospital particularly hard around some of the basic needs for things like face shields, or certain ventilators, certain airflow ways to handle that within face shields. So they went right ahead, purchased plexiglass, started to manufacture face shields. They did that in combination with a community organization that is a kind of a makerspace type organization in our community. So a really nice partnership between our community and our college to actually turn into a little mini manufacturing space, making face shields, also making a way to kind of get some ventilation behind certain types of masks, and did that within our engineering labs. So very quickly, I think, tapped into something that we all know that higher ed stands for within our communities, which is a space of innovation. That, you know, we are engines of creative thinking. We are engines of innovation. You know, if we have a crisis in front of us, we can help lead our community, and we can work with our community on some new innovative ways forward. I also would say, you know, I would kind of end that, but I think that COVID is revealing that really higher education, we can step up and say, we're centers of innovation and creativity, but we are centers of caring. We are a heart and a soul for our community. And I think that's what I heard a lot of my colleagues saying, you know, we are feeding our students, you know, physically feeding students, not just feeding the mind, but feeding the body. You know, we are caring community servants. So I think that higher education maybe now is clearer even more than ever on the important role that we play. COVID's kind of sharpened that for us. And I think if we continue to position ourselves as spaces of innovation, spaces that we're here to solve the problems of equity, we're here to solve the problems of workforce development, we're here to solve some of the difficult issues that our communities face. And we're doing that in an innovative way, but we are actually doing that in a very caring way also. I think if we can get that message across coming out of COVID, we'll be, you know, even stronger than ever together.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nixon. And, you know, I'd like to welcome back all of the panelists now to join us in this next discussion Q&A, because really what we're hearing, what we're seeing thought leaders. We're seeing thought leaders right now, ladies and gentlemen, attendees. This is where we are, and you're seeing people now, presidents of these colleges, universities, who are on the front lines, and happy to take some questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Pink. I've seen you've been very active in that, and I'm happy to open up some of those questions. Some people also shared some questions before with me, and I'd like to start by opening up the first one that sort of really grabbed me. How can we move past the stigma of what it means to attend or have a degree from a community college or an open access campus? It's a heavy one.
I'll jump in there. I think several things. So number one, I think we have to do something that typically higher ed does a lousy job of, which is tell our story and really shout our story. We are by nature, this is all Pink opinion, we are by nature humble people that do not like to say, look at what we've done. But we are in a space now, and have been, where we've got to, as community colleges, say, here's the impact we make. Here's what we do. We, several years ago, after I became president, we did an economic impact study because we wanted to get out to our community what the numbers were. Let's get out the data and saying, here's the economic impact we have on this community. Those data were staggering to some people. They had no idea that JRCC had $500 million in economic impact to West Michigan. And so we have got to get out and make sure that we are bolstering those data and what we do, and alongside what we do as far as our students either getting jobs, transferring to four-year institutions, or both. We've got to help people understand, here's what those numbers look like from the standpoint of people really changing their trajectory. We change poverty cycles in this work. That's what we do. We've got to make sure that those messages are out there.
Thank you so much. I think you said that very well. I'd like to invite also the other panelists to come. And
I'd like to jump in.
please.
I obviously support everything that Dr. Pink has said, and to expound upon that, when we think about community colleges, certificate programs, the AAS, the AA, the AS, AFAs, et cetera, these jobs now command not just a decent wage, but a good wage. And in some instances, with a little bit of time on the job, a great wage. There are students completing certificate programs in AASs and AS degrees who are going on to start off at the age of 20 and 21 in the high five-figure jobs. In some instances, 3, 4, 5 years later, they're making 6 figures. I wish that I would have known what to do with that type of remuneration as a young person and had the opportunity to work magic with purchasing a home. So the economic impact, as Dr. Pink alluded to, is also attacking generational poverty. And I think that community colleges and institutions that provide learn and earn opportunities, we have a moral imperative, and that's what we serve as in our communities. We create access and opportunity for those who thought that they did not have the right or that they did not have the voice to engage in those spaces. So we're creating spaces through DE&I. We're creating spaces through telling our story and our narrative. And one of the more interesting things that I noticed about the almost 1,132 community colleges across the United States, it's a little known fact how dynamic and how much expertise we have on our campuses. And if we don't tell our story, it is much like me sitting at this table. If you're not at the table, then you're often going to be a part of the menu. So it is important for us to share that narrative that we are exceptional, we are experts, and we do something creative and dynamic for those who graduate and come through our thresholds.
That's really well said. I really appreciate that. Well, Dr. Moore, would you like to say something?
Well, thank you for that invitation. I think Dr. Torrence and Dr. Pink really said it well. The only thing I would add, and I think all of us as panelists has touched on, is I think the reason why we are equity minded and we have a social justice framework is because we understand and know the foundation of what we are doing is combating poverty. When people say, what are community colleges doing? What are folks in higher education doing? We're trying to eradicate poverty, because if you're successful, you know that you not only change lives, but you're changing the trajectory of a generation. Many are first-time generation students. When they come through our programs and they are successful in completion, whether it's a certificate, transfer, degree, it changes the dynamic, not of that individual, but of that entire family. And so I would agree that if we could do more in branding our stories and scaling those up, I think that we can continue to help educate folks. We are combating against a perception that somehow someone's done something wrong if they've gone to a community college, or they forgot something, or they didn't get it all right. And it's the exact opposite. And as many of us on the panel know and around the table, now that we are in a pandemic, many of those students who thought that they were going to graduate high school and go away somewhere are rethinking everything they thought they were going to do. Just as it's somewhat related, but it's not identical. When we were in the last recession, when people thought they were going to do one thing and then the dynamics of the economy changed. Now we have more people unemployed right now than we do have employed. And it's very frightening. Students who thought that they were going to do one thing coming the fall, those students and those parents are rethinking their new dynamic, their new reality. And it has always been a community college, an open access institution that has been at the forefront to help the community respond to whatever the current crisis is. And I just think it's unfortunate that most folks forget that when things come back to what we call normal. So I would echo Dr. Torrence and Dr. Pink that, we've always been there. We just need to do a better job of scaling up that level of awareness.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Nixon, do you have a final word that you'd like to share as well as we close out?
Yes, and I think that, again, everything that's been said before has been just so fantastic. How can I add to that? But I do think that in this country, we have this image of school being formed by our image of the top Ivy League schools, right? That sort of image of this is what higher education looks like. And I think what we're all in agreement on and what we're saying here is that we need to maybe look at ourselves and do a better job of explaining to the country that there is a different model, a different way of defining higher education, which actually is a much more community-based, much more individual-based, much more and I would go back to everything we've been saying, equity-based, diversity-serving, institutional structure that is actually what the nation needs right now more than ever. And that if we can kind of convey that more successfully, I think that students, parents, but communities also, again, would be, they're already proud, but be prouder than ever of the types of things that our institutions offer to them. And I think that everything that people have been saying is, I think that, the idea that higher education serves the community, I think that the panelists here are like the best representation of that, right? That we are serving the people in our community and we're serving the problems of our communities. And again, we had COVID just teach us many lessons about how much that is needed. We need to look at our neighborhoods, we need to look at our backyards, we need to reach out to each other and say, we're in this together. What do we need to solve to become stronger as we look ahead? I mean, I think we know that it's not over yet. We still have a rough fall, rough year up ahead. And really, when we're talking about solving difficult situations, you turn to your community, you turn to your neighbor, you work on it in your backyard. And that's why I think the institutions we are representing are the problem solvers for the types of crisis that we've all just experienced. So I would just say that we offer a lot, and I think that going back to what Dr. Pink said, maybe we just need to do a little better, we like to be humble. I think being humble is a very noble attribute, but maybe we shouldn't be so humble. Maybe we should play up a little bit more the special role that we play. And I would just end by saying, I think all of us know that the community college open access education, that is the pipeline for students to move into a different world, the world of ideas and the world of economic opportunity. And we need students more than ever that are embracing education. We need more well-educated people more than ever to help us solve the problems that are up ahead. So I think, we look to our communities with open arms, right? The community college and open access institutions, we are saying, come in, we embrace you. And I think that is what we need more than ever.
Wow, thank you. You summed it up, everyone. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, attendees, global-minded. Carol, last.
Thank all of you. And I just want to say, I think it's going to be the golden age of open access and community colleges, because I know so many people that are just saying, let's look at this as a year to get every kind of experience, every badge, every credential. And that's what people are talking about. So I think you're in that situation to be so very responsive. And Crystal at Aussie and all of us at Global Minded, we look forward to being the big network to connect your first-gen students and your other students, military, returning adults, whomever, to role models, mentors, internships, and jobs. And we really believe it's all about the network and the collaboration. So thanks to all of you, especially all of you right before a 3-day weekend. I'm like, this is commitment for people to be here before Memorial Day weekend with all of you. So thank you. You guys did a great job. Bye-bye.